Hello, friends. We have a festive little holiday episode for you today. Here at Multistory, we're fascinated by all kinds of different urban places, and that includes the beloved Christmas Village. And so we thought we'd just do a little episode, fun, light, festive episode for you. So there's more than one type of Christmas village, so it's important to clarify what we're talking about. Of course, there's like the village that is just decorated for Christmas. So in a sense, that is a Christmas village. Here's a few pictures of that. And just for you, Ellen and Matt, I included a Christmas Village cycle track on the bottom left for you.
Thank
There
you.
Is that Strasbourg?
it is, the Capitale de Noël, although many other cities would claim that as well. Okay, so within the village that's decorated for Christmas, often there is a Christmas village. Lots of little chalets put up for the season, decorated with trees, full of little treats and pastries and trinkets you can buy for the holiday. So this is also a Christmas village within the Christmas village. And if we keep going down this like Christmas village inception, maybe at one of these little chalets, these little shops, you could buy what eventually would go in the Christmas village under your Christmas tree. So this is what I want to talk about today. Specifically today, we're going to talk about what are the urban design principles that shape the quintessential Christmas village. Before we start, though, I mentioned this to the both of you, and man, not to put you on the spot, but you were a little bit skeptical about the merits of the Christmas village, and if I could say so, maybe a little bit of a Grinch about this. So what's going on? Like, where did your holiday cheer go? What are your reactions to the holiday Christmas village?
I think my criticism was that most implementations that I've seen are very unrealistic. If we're talking about urban design, right? We have like four single family houses that are oversized around a big meadow of ice that has 50 people out, moving about as if like, where's all this density? It's like people in the suburbs want a train and a public square that's lively, but they don't want any density. Like that, I feel like urban villages have the same sort of lack of contention with reality.
Did your family have a tradition of a Christmas village beneath the tree? Is that something you've experienced or grown up with?
We didn't. In fact, the way I know it, when I've seen it implemented, is not under the tree. It's like on a mantle or in like a window or something like that.
I think that's very common. What about you, Ellen? Any Christmas village history in your family?
Not in my family. I dated a guy whose family did set up the whole village underneath the tree with the train track was the feature of that.
Hmm.
So it did have public transit was front and center. You were able to get very easily from the downtown area over to the ice rink or kind of whatever else they had set up.
Did
So,
it have districts? Did you feel like people left downtown to go out to the ice rink area?
at the time I was far more interested in drinking the eggnog. So I didn't look super closely.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, this is great news. I feel like I can spread the Christmas spirit to the both of you and share my love of the Christmas village. And I think everything you said is true, Matt. I do think there is something of value in this though, because it's sort of like a latent desire for a more walkable, human scale, like beautiful urban spaces. And we can see that in Christmas villages. It's the same like Disneyland's Main Street or these Christmas markets, these actual Christmas markets in these towns. Like everyone wants to be in this comfortable, cozy, human scale space, and these Christmas villages are sort of a manifestation of that. And I don't think that's like the main reason that people do it.
You don't think
Go ahead.
that the majority of the United States is sitting here saying, "What I actually wanna do for Christmas is implement my ideal urban design underneath a tree?"
You,
You
you
don't think
know,
that's the impetus for these?
probably not. It's more of a niche. That it's more of a me thing. I can
But
Okay.
no, I
I
do
can
think
admit
you're onto
that.
something, Tess, that it is so fanciful, like we've talked about many times, that every walkable urban space in America is basically theme parkified, whether it literally is a theme park or it's been turned into a tourist trap. This is another like almost impossibly idyllic place where like neighbors are connecting, like in a Hallmark movie, and you can't create that in your actual community, so you put it under your tree. I don't think it's as conscious as you might suggest, Ellen, but I think there's more urban design stuff to it than we maybe meets the eye now that Tess has interrogated this concept.
It could be I can accept that, but it also makes me feel like the what I'm thinking now is, you do see a lot of really dense Christmas villages under trees and on mantles, and you don't see a whole lot of cul-de-sacs or massive parking lots in front of a store. So, yeah, I can accept this.
So part of it, I think part of it's that. I think part of it's also just tradition. So I was curious, where did these come from? And as far as I can tell, these are like evolution of nativity scene. So what began as like the classic nativity scene as part of Christmas sort of grew and expanded out of the manger and the stable, so to speak. And then it was later like recontextualized into the places where these nativity scenes existed. And then at that point, it sort of became commercialized as part of Christmas and sort of a thing that you do. But that's neither here nor there. The main thing I want to say, I think these are an expression of a desire for a kind of urban life that people are missing in their lives. So, as
Aw.
usual, yeah, you might say, Tess, what are your qualifications to speak on Christmas villages? And so I want to share with you that prior to my formal urban planning training, I began my village planning advisory role for my grandmother's Christmas tree, circa 1983. And over the course of my 2 decade career as a Christmas tree village planner, I saw a lot of changes in the community. As you can see here, when I began, there was still rail service to the village. You can see that on the bottom left, the rail track. But in the early 1980s, this was already gaining the perception of sort of being obsolete, difficult to maintain. It was taking away valuable land that could be developed. And like many American cities, soon that rail would disappear. In the early years, the buildings in the village were primarily like a cheap, flexible plastic, sort of easy to build. You also see a lot of auto-oriented uses here. So you can see a service station. There's some above ground utility poles. There was also a lot of rural land, farmland, a lot of open space in the early years of the village. But as things progressed, you begin to
Still.
have some growth pressures. So the older plastic neighborhoods are beginning to be encroached by ceramic homes. You can see that suburban sprawl, these ceramic homes, are in places that were formerly farm and forest land, a very classic story in American cities. And gradually you can see that these older, if you look in the back, these older commercial and industrial core of the village became disinvested and largely vacant. All the lights are off back there. And after a while, these areas were completely redeveloped as ceramic neighborhoods. And as the growth pressure continued to increase, we begin to see more density. Transit was reintroduced, but this time it's more of a tourist circulator than a real train network. And by the final years of the village, it had to become quite urban again. So ceramic homes became ceramic townhomes and apartments and multi-story mixed-use structures.
Am I also seeing that there's an urban border or a boundary that's like you can't develop outside of the snow cover? Like, is it some forced density?
Well, this is a key thing. We'll talk about this in a little bit. There are physical
Oh,
constraints to where a Christmas
yeah.
village can grow, and that affects what happens in the
Oh
village,
my gosh.
much like it does in other cities.
Okay.
Okay. So every village is different. Every village has its own history. There's many that scarcely change at all over many, many years. But I do think there are some general urban design principles that we can glean here. And so, without further ado, here are my Christmas tree village urban design principles. So, I begin with transportation. And I do think that every good Christmas tree village is served by like passenger freight rail. This is really the mode of operation for a Christmas tree village is that long trips are taken by train. And once you reach the town, it's a highly pedestrianized space. There might be a few cars or carriages depending on the time period, but for the most part, it's a compact, walkable pedestrian area that is connected to other destinations by rail service.
This
So
inner city rail that reaches the other side of the tree, it is not for circulating around the city because the city is compact and walkable.
in general, I think you will find rail that acts as a transit service within Christmas tree villages as well. I don't think that's uncommon at all. Depends on how much space you have. Um,
Okay.
okay, so I think building orientation is a big part of Christmas villages because if we think about our cities, often we think about building orientation, like we want to orient buildings towards the street if we want to have a more active street frontage. or a lot of time architects will think about orienting a building to be south facing to get better sunlight and be more energy efficient. But the rule for Christmas villages is sightlines. So all the buildings have to be oriented to be visible from a particular point in the sky as though there were a giant child in the distance gazing down who needed to see everything that was happening in the village at once. And this has a big impact on the urban design of the village. It affects like how you lay out the streets, what sorts of ways buildings can face each other. Building orientation, very important for a Christmas tree village. This is sort of what you were talking about, Ellen. So I think growth management, huge deal for Christmas tree villages.
Yeah.
So just by the nature of these things, often there are new residents or new structures every year, and it's sort of an additive process. There is a natural growth factor to a Christmas tree village, but without careful layout and thinking about growth, these additions each year can turn what was an idyllic village into essentially an overcrowded, like candy cane slum. Like you have more people, you have more buildings, and eventually you get gentrification because when the village can no longer physically expand in the room beneath the tree, then you begin to see displacement of older people, older structures. So growth management, very important, very sensitive topic for Christmas tree villages.
I can see that. Were there guidelines that you started to follow, Tess, when you were like setting up your own Christmas villages? Was there a hierarchy that you kind of found yourself inadvertently following?
I will say there was a very strong pressure to highlight the newest and shiniest edition. And I think we see that in our cities as well. Often there's an investment in new development and a neglect of older, underperforming properties. It's a similar instinct. Everyone wants to celebrate the new shiny thing and see it find its place in the village.
Also, structures can be freely relocated without consequence, right? So if you had to build for permanence and not knowing you couldn't move the structures when you add new things, how would that change your initial
Yeah.
layout to plan for
They're
the future?
they're very dynamic. Yes, year to year, total transformations of the layout of the city. Yeah, I think that's a good one. I That's probably one I would add, man. I wasn't thinking about that, but you're absolutely right. The almost ethereal impermanence of the Christmas village has a big impact on where things go and how they work.
I have a question about your actual village.
Hmm.
Again, this is maybe the anthropologist in me coming out, but were there unspoken rules each year that's like you couldn't rearrange within a year? Once you set a building up and that was its spot, were you allowed to move it again?
Well,
That
there were certainly storylines that persisted. There were
okay.
people and places and stories that persisted through the history of the village. And this happens in real cities too. There was a certain little ceramic dog that always had to sit on the same porch because that's the house that that dog
Okay.
belonged to.
I see.
Yeah, so each little person and place had a story that had its own logical consistency that you had to sort of weave together, just like we have to learn how to live together with our own neighbors.
Cute.
Okay,
I mean,
active.
very serious.
No, I
Sorry.
mean,
I
it's
didn't
both
the
cute and
diminutive.
very serious. It can be both. Active lifestyles, very important for a Christmas village. Sledding, snowball fights, wood chopping, caroling, ice skating, strong pedestrian activity. All of these things characterize most Christmas villages. Over here, where I am in France, the ski slope is far more prominent than it was, as I recall, in the Midwest of the United States. But regardless, lots of outdoor winter activity. These are very active, healthy places.
And I assume it is always, there's always snow. Like that's just a rule.
Yeah, yeah, these
Okay.
could be flat or hilly or mountainous, but snow is a key part of this. And maybe that speaks to an ethos of climate protection for the land of Christmas villages in general. Maybe they're keeping their temperatures a few degrees cooler than we are in our world. Maybe we've got some things to learn from them. That's not to say that Christmas villages don't have their problems. If we want to talk about public safety, I would say many, if not most, Christmas villages are plagued by home break-ins from jolly men in red suits. Not just that, their fire hazards are prevalent. And another aspect that is sort of related to public safety, but a little bit different, we can talk about wildlife management. I don't know if this is every village, but every Christmas village that I have worked in has had a problem with bears, just bears everywhere. I don't know what. Uh,
That affects so much. You really have to take bears into consideration when you're designing a village. Like
yeah,
Colorado's got all kinds of rules about doorknobs.
yeah, and
I think
and
part of
it's
the problem is there's so much food out, right? Like
That's a really
there's
good
too much
point.
food. There's too many candy canes used
yeah,
for
There are entire
decoration.
houses made out of gingerbread
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
Maybe
Right.
they
The
just
Sometimes the
bears are
homes
gonna
are
come
made
to
of
town.
candy, and
Right.
we can't blame the bears. This was their habitat. It's us who
absolutely.
Right.
encroached into their habitat.
I
Um,
I
think you
mean,
might be fortunate that this bear wasn't bigger, like, to be like, it could be that the bear was the size of the tree that the village was under.
yeah, yeah. Good call. Good call. Um,
Thank you.
anyway, the bears everywhere. So
bears
also,
everywhere.
looks
Bears.
like the cows are also
Those 2 look
running amok. Anyway,
those
wildlife
2 bears that
management.
you're pointing out look like they're gonna go fight.
Yeah,
Not only are
Yeah,
there
like
bears trying to eat your food, they're gonna be fighting in the streets.
I don't think the owners of that nice colonial there with the garage, it's like the garage on the side, are going to be happy about their back lawn being full of
well,
cows. Like,
they're the type of person who moved out to the edge of town, and when they built their house, it was the last thing in town. And now the growth is spreading out with them, and now they're just grumpy about their neighbors, and they're not used, they're going to complain about rural and farm uses around them, but they moved there. That's the place they picked.
They chose this. They can complain if they want, but
Yeah.
I'm not hearing it.
Okay. Energy
Oh,
access,
dear.
very important for Christmas tree villages. I think luckily what we're seeing is Christmas villages are transitioning away from giant incandescent light bulbs as sources for building lighting and heat. So that's getting a little bit greener with LEDs. But these villages have to invest heavily in like surge protector technology. They have to manage their transmission lines. And in terms of urban design, one of the big challenges is how do you orient your village to have the most efficient access to the power supply? So just like anyone developing and planning a neighborhood would have to figure out all the utility hookups, you have to plan your Christmas village to be able to access the utilities that are needed to serve the new residents of your Christmas village. So important urban design principle. Um,
That also looks like a tripping hazard if you're walking down the street.
yeah, I think you run into the same dilemmas that the early builders of our American cities faced is where do all the wires go? And we didn't have good solutions for a long time. And I think it's something these Christmas villages still struggle with.
a
Um,
horse-drawn sleigh is going to rip those right out. You're
yeah,
going to have a
Right.
huge issue.
yeah,
Yeah.
Brownout. Absolutely.
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. The last thing I want to talk about is a little bit sort of bigger issue, and that's the economic diversity of Christmas tree villages. In my opinion, I think too many of these villages are overly dependent or exclusively dependent on holiday tourism, and that's just not a very resilient or sustainable way to build a local economy. And I think in the case of my grandmother's Christmas village, once the organizers of the Christmas festivities decided to move to another location, the reason for that village went away. And then eventually the people left as well because they didn't have a reason to be there. So I think economic diversity is a big need and a big challenge for Christmas tree villages. And it's part of the reason that they seem so fragile and impermanent is that they're so responsive to these waves of Christmas tourism.
This is a really good point. I also think that Christmas villages have a higher propensity of having a spot that's considered the other side of the tracks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
High rail usage, really easy to like kind of not understand where you stand with this. Did
Yeah,
you come from the outside or the inside, the left side or the right side?
absolutely.
It's also curious, to your point, Tess, about tourism economy. There is no apparent sustainable employment source, right? So if their capitalistic success is a factor of outsiders, then like where do the locals that aren't running the country store, one of the many country stores, how are they making their money to have these beautiful homes that are so manicured? That's one of the paradoxes I've always found, and to drive all this economic development year after year
Yeah.
of all this new building.
Yeah, I think it's similar to many tourist communities. It's a lot of outside dollars coming in, investing, driving up prices, displacing local industries. I think you see a lot of that. These are probably a lot of seasonal workers working at the ski slopes, working at the candy shop, renting out ice skates, that sort of thing. But what happens in the summer months? I don't think they see the visitors. They don't see the activity. It's tough for them. Um,
I might make an argument that they have the opportunity to just have a very small economic system that is not actually dependent on growth. It might just be exactly what you need to kind of add a little bit every year based on what the town's needs are. Yes, is it funded by outside dollars? Yes, they need to make sure that the amenities that are attracting these tourists stay nice. But throughout the year, it might just be that you're living a nice little life with people who you've decided you can make a living with.
mhm. Oh,
Like
Also,
summer in a college town.
it's like summer in a college town. That's right. And there's a lot of women who move from New York who had high paying jobs who come back home for the winter and like wind up staying. But I bet like anymore you can work remotely. You can be making a New York salary while you're living under a Christmas tree.
Is it because they met their high school sweetheart and realized that life is about more than just ambition in the big
yeah.
city?
Yeah,
They were working
yes,
80-hour weeks and focusing on that big project, and they went home for the holidays. And there was some simple person there who just works with their hands and has grown up there and lived there their whole life, and they're ready to teach them the meaning of Christmas, the spirit of Christmas.
exactly. This has all been very enlightening,
Yeah.
Tess.
So those are what come to mind for me as some basic urban design principles or characteristics for Christmas villages. You mentioned a couple others. One was the impermanence. I thought that was really interesting. Did anything else pop in your head as we were looking at these?
I feel like all architecture styles are like Dickensian era. I did see some like ranch houses in the first iteration of your example, which is super strange. I had not seen that before, but mostly these are of an era, right, where we've evolved through history from the manger to, the 1500s and stopped.
Yeah,
They
I think
kind of
that's true.
give
A glass and concrete modernist home. I feel like that there would be a neighborhood meeting about that in the Christmas village if someone wanted to build it.
Yeah. When you mentioned we didn't dive into the history of the actual making of the buildings, but you mentioned at the very beginning that it started more as a manger scene. It did give me this vision of how the original manger would have been in the middle as the nice things just get built up around it. And where does the conversation happen of is this historically something that we want to keep, or should we be displacing this inn that encourages people to bring in drums of drumming and frankincense and myrrh and like odd gifts that we're not used to in our current society. So making that all like it was just a very visual thing for me in my brain of like, here's this very modest manger scene, and all around it now are these
Yeah.
big vacation homes.
Do these Christmas villages have room in them to welcome some poor strangers in need?
Right.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Exactly.
Well, I think this is a good talk. I think we have a lot of good ideas to support these Christmas villages going forward to help them reorient towards what is their real raison d'etre, their reason to exist. And hopefully we can move forward with a greater understanding of what makes these places special. And maybe one day you guys will plan your own Christmas villages and you'll be able to make them just how they should look.
If anyone's watching, share your Christmas villages with us.
Yeah. If you have other urban design principles for a Christmas village that you want to add, put them into the comments. We'd love to read them. I hope everyone has a very happy holiday, and we'll see you with some new episodes in the new year.
Hooray!
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Bye.